Well, welcome to another lesson of the Content Modeling Weekly course. I am Marcelo Lewin, the Headless Creator. As always, get a hold of me right there, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. Send me your questions, comments, feedbacks, whatever you like. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. Today, I'm super excited because we're going to be content modeling a quiz. Many of us need to use quizzes on our website to test people out on certain topics you've written or created. This will show you how to create a content model for any headless CMS that supports unlimited multiple types of quizzes with various different types of questions. We're going to get into those questions types in just a minute. But you know how this works out. As always, before we get started, go register at headlesscreator.com. Get your free account. You'll have access not only to this lesson and the Miro board, which we're going to be doing our content model around, but you also have access to a bunch of other content. You can see right here, there's a lot of content that you'll have access to, lots of lessons. This is lesson number 40, so you got another 39 lessons you can watch, and then you also have access to all the Miro boards. Each of those lessons have a Miro board associated with it, so you'll get access to that. So get your free account, you'll have access to that. You'll have access to all of the Focus On courses, the Discover Headless Tech course, and anything that comes up in the future. So again, for those of you watching live, please go register. I'm trying to hit 1,000 registered users by the end of the year, and right now I'm actually on scheduled to hit it probably around end of October. So I'm super excited. I'm way over 800 registered users already. For those of you that already have an account, thank you so much. I really appreciate you getting that account. All right, as most of you know, the way this works is I restart the intro for the on-demand version. The on-demand version, there's absolutely no marketing whatsoever. So just there's my email address. Feel free to reach out to me, get your account. But we're going to restart this intro, and I'll see you in just 10 seconds. Well, welcome to another lesson of the Content Modeling Weekly course. I am Marcelo Lewin, the Headless Creator. As always, feel free to reach out to me right there, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. Send me any questions, comments, ideas you want me to model in the future. I'll put it into the queue. I love getting your feedback. Okay, today we're going to talk about quizzes and how do we model a quiz in a headless CMS. Of course, you can always go and go to a quiz site. And in fact, I'm going to show you one. In fact, why don't we just jump in right now and show my screen. Whoop, let's go. There we go. Perfect. So let's go into, like, for example, Typeform is a quiz site that you can get an account and create your quizzes. But sometimes you want to incorporate the entire quiz, not just a link to a quiz, into a headless CMS. So today what we're going to talk about is bringing some of this kind of functionality that you see here in Typeform. I just picked Typeform because it had the ability to do a free account. It's not that they're sponsors or anything like that. Just I went in there and created an account just to check it out. And you can see that, for example, a quiz will have many questions. Each of these are questions. And the questions could be a variety of types: multiple choice, phone number, short text, long text. They have a variety of types. Now, we're not going to do all these types today, but we're going to set up a system, a model that will be scalable so you can create as many types as you want. Today, what I'm going to do is we're going to focus on 4 types: multiple choice, multiple picture choice, so you can pick between some pictures, yes, no answers, and then fill in answers. And then we're going to create a new type on demand so you can kind of see my thought process behind this. And then it's up to you to, keep scaling this as much as you want. So with that said, real quick to analyze, as you can see here, let's look at how this works in Typeform. Is obviously that you have a question, and here, for example, you have a question and you have 3 choices, and one of those choices is correct. Here's another type of question, more questions, multiple choices. You can see that they show you a variety of things. So how do we do something like this? Now, I'm not going to show you the front end delivery, but how do we model that on the back end? Let's go and do that. So we're going to go ahead and turn that off, and let's zoom in here. And let's start with the basics. And what is the basic? Well, every quiz has a question. So we know we're going to have a question. Let's make this a little larger so you can see here. Whoop. All right, so we know that we have questions. Now, questions have the question, the actual question itself. Then we're going to have, what type of question is that? Remember, in Typeform, we have multiple choice, fill in the blank, that kind of stuff. So we're going to have a type. We're going to have some parameters for that question. For example, we want to know, can we randomize, or should we randomize the answers? Should we allow multiple answers? Answers should be plural. And we should also do something like, is answer is required, right? Should we require the answer? Then we know we need to have answers. In other words, choices, that one of those choices is an answer. We know that. So here is the basic of a question. Of course, you can expand, you can add more attributes to this, but right now we're going to try to keep it simple. So let me, we'll make it like that. All right. So let's talk about type first. We'll jump into answers in just a second. But type is going to be a reference. And what is it going to be a reference to? We're going to create a new one called question type. And it's just going to have a name and a code ID like that. Now, what does that mean? Why do we have this? Well, I'm just going to give you as an example. Here we go. This is just question types that we're going to hold here as entries. This isn't a content type. This is just a note, a side note here, right? But these are some question types that we're going to enter. We're going to enter multiple choice and give it a code ID. Why do we give it a code ID? Well, these types will correspond to some sort of code template that knows how to render that type of question, right? With the correct, if it's multiple choice, if it's picture choice. And that's something you'll work with your developer for that. So we'll leave it like that. Alrighty. So that means that type then is going to be, let me get this here because I have my notes on the side and to avoid a little bit of typing. It'll be a one-to-one to question type. And basically you can link to it. In other words, you can't create new types because we're going to allow, that's where we apply content governance. And we only want certain people to be able to create types because you have to deal with your developer, right? To talk about, okay, how is this type rendered in this delivery channel? And they have to create code for that. So here we're just going to allow the linking. Authors can only link to it. Now let's talk about answers. What does answers mean? Well, answers really mean that a question has choices, one of them being an answer. So let's talk about the easiest one to talk about, which is multiple choice. And of course, I pre-baked some of this stuff because I don't want you to see me type in everything. But for example, for multiple choice, we'll have a type called multiple text choice because there's also multiple image choice that I'd like to incorporate. But the multiple text choice is going to have a label. So that's going to be like the label of the choice, like red, green, blue. If you say, you know, what's your favorite color? Red, green, blue. One of them, it's going to ask you, is this entry the answer? And then what's the points? So in this case, if it is the answer, you give it a point. If it's not the answer, you give it negative points. You will say it's not the answer and it's -10 if they pick it as the answer, right? So then you can start tracking points. Because remember, in a quiz, sometimes you want to track points. Now you can do points, you can do percentage, it's up to you. Here, I'm just going to do points. So what's another type of answer that we may have? Well, I mentioned to you that we may have something similar to multiple text choice, but it would be more of a media. And what do I mean by media? Well, what I mean by that is like pick your favorite animal. It could be a picture of a dog and a picture of a cat. Or it would say, well, whatever it may be. But the answer is 2 images or 3 images or 4 images. So they can click on the actual image. So this requires, it's similar to this. And I could have added a media field in here and reuse this, but I wanted to keep it kind of simple. And you'll see how it works in the headless CMS. But I wanted to keep it simple for the authors, right? So we have a multiple media choice that has a media. Same thing, is this particular entry or this particular media the answer? And if it is, what's the positive points? If it's not, what's the negative points? So now we have two types that we can choose: multiple text choice, multiple media choice. Of course, like I mentioned, we're going to have fill in and yes, no. So let's talk about yes, no. I'm going to go ahead and bring this over here. The magic of pre-baking all this. All right. So here's another type. It's going to be yes, no. And this is only one entry. And why? Because a yes, no is either going to be yes or no. So the developer knows that on the front end, it'll ask the question, and it's going to have a yes or a no. Now, you're going to create, an author will create an entry for a yes and no, and it'll pick what is the answer. Is the answer yes or is the answer no? Those are the only two choices. Then the author can also change the labels. Instead of by default showing yes for yes and no for no, you can say, yes, I love it, no, I hate it, or whatever label you want to display. And then if yes is the answer, what is the correct point? But if they pick no, what is the incorrect point? Or if no is the answer, that they picked the incorrect, right? So here are the correct points and incorrect points for this particular entry. So that takes care of yes and no type of questions. And you're probably wondering, well, how does all of this relate to the question? We'll get to that in just 1 minute, but let's finish off with the fill-in. Now, the fill-in is, like I showed you before, where if there's a question and they have to type it in, right? That would be the fill-in question. So let's go ahead and we'll move this over here. We'll put this over here. Oh, there we go. Let's move this. There we go. All right, so we have fill-in. The entry has a name. Then the value must match. And what I'm putting here, this is going to be like a select that the author picks. The answer is where they actually enter the answer. So for example, what is the host's name if I'm testing them on me? The answer is Marcelo. I would put in there the answer Marcelo. Now, then we can say, hey, when the user types in the answer, it must match exactly Marcelo. Or it must start with Marcelo, I'm allowing that, or it must end with Marcelo, or at a minimum have this. In other words, Marcelo must exist. They can put, hello, Marcelo, goodbye. As long as it has Marcelo, then we're good to go. And then if they do it correctly, what are the points? If they do it incorrectly, then what are the negative points that we do? So as promised, right, we have 4 types: multiple choice, picture, yes, no, fill in the answer. Now I'm going to remove this so not to confuse you, as it's part of the content model. It's not. Okay, so here we have the content now, or the content model. We have a question. The question has a question type, which we have this here, so we can do this so you can see, right? Goes to here. And now under answers, what we're going to do, and let me bring it here so it's less typing for me. We're going to reference. We're going to allow them, or we're going to allow the author to pick multiple text choice, multiple media choice, fill in, or yes, no, which is right there. Yes, no. And it's a 0 to many because it really depends on which one you want to choose, right? I mean, we could make it 1 to many and say, hey, for this question, we got to have at least one answer. In fact, I would do that, right? Because you can't have a question without an answer. So let's change that. We'll change that and we'll adjust it in the headless CMS in just a minute. But now we have the ability to create a question, give it a